Hey everybody, Alex Aronson here with Court Accountability Action here on the Legal AF channel. We are thrilled to be back with you. I am with my partner in stopping crime and corruption, the great Lisa Graves, and a dear friend and partner of ours, Michael Podhorzer. Michael Podhorzer, longtime political director of the AFL-CIO, has become one of the most important thinkers and organizers on what's happening in our country these days, has started some incredibly valuable, essential, really, nonprofit organizations, including the Research Collaborative, doing incredible messaging and survey work, research work on what voters are thinking about, and a newer group called State Democracy Defenders, which is doing what it sounds like. He also is the author of a essential Substack called Weekend Reading, which is going to be the topic of our video here today. His latest installment, The John Roberts Election, which is the second part of a series called Politicians in Robes. And one of the things I so appreciate about you, Mike, and the way you think about things is, I think as our discourse and our news media and as our politicians, I think get really caught in the waves of day-to-day news cycles, you have a unique ability to zoom out, bring historical perspective, use analytics and data to bring sanity to what is increasingly an insane world. And I think that's what you've really been able to do with this weekend reading series. And I want to dig into it. This one is essential. You're not a lawyer, right? You have worked in politics. You're a big part of the labor
Right.
movement for most of your career. But in the last several years, you have come to really emphasize the importance of the courts, the danger that these right-wing justices who have been put there by this billionaire special interest cabal that Lisa and I and Michael Popak, our co-host here on Legal AF, get into week to week on this channel. I was hoping to kind of get your big picture take on that, but also through the lens of this incredibly essential installment of your Politicians in Robes series, which I think really does a tremendous job of helping us sort of see how we got to this place where billionaires are calling all the shots, where we are increasingly not in control of our own fates and futures. And we're still in this moment, we have an opportunity to leverage our collective power and see the change we need in the world. Can you give us a quick overview of this article and dig into a little bit about the Supreme Court's and these justices' role in bringing us to this point?
Sure. And it's great to be with you. You both have been so indispensable over so many years and trying to bring accountability to this completely unaccountable group of justices put there by the Federalist Society project that has completely remade our country. And if a visitor from 2008, the last presidential election before Citizens United, showed up today, they would not have a clue what was going on, right? Before the Citizens United decision, uh, almost all of the money spent in elections was by the candidates and the parties, and the money was disclosed. There were many, many problems with that. But what's happened since then is that they opened the door to the plutocrats, right? It's basically, that's their they're hijacking it by putting justices on the court who then turn around and give them more power in the political process and make it more difficult for their corruption to be prosecuted by the Justice Department, right? I mean, they basically, by stacking the courts in the way I'm sure that you've talked about a lot, they not only like have them there, but they basically change the rules without any democratic process or any accountability from us. And so we're now in a position where our elections are not just in corrupted by this money, but actually they're spending more than the money coming from individuals, right? Before the 2012 presidential election, there was no outside spending, right? Now, as you can see on this chart, it's gone from zero to $3 billion, right? That's the billionaires coming in. It's Musk, it's Jeff Bezos, it's all of them suddenly, right, letting us see that their purchase of big media properties, their engagement in politics was not so innocent after all, right? The question is, why have we been so credulous for all these years that there wouldn't be a blowback on our ability to have free and fair elections, right? And so consider these things. The first is if we look at the House and Senate elections, again, up through 2010, there was no real outside spending, right? In this election, every single one of the toss-up Senate races will have more money spent by outside billionaires than by the two candidates running against each other. And the same is true for 85% of all the toss-up House races. Really sit with that, right? Before this, candidates ran against each other. Now we have warring plutocratic factions running against each other. And that's who whoever wins will be accountable to, right? And that is the world that all of the decisions, whether it's Citizens United, McCutcheon, Rucho, all of these things combine in a way to create this dystopia. Another way of thinking about it is in 2000, House and Senate candidates raised as much money from individuals in their state, right? The people they're supposed to represent, as the money that they got from PACs and other kind of outside donors, right? In this election already, it's 7 times as much from outside influences, right? The people the people they're supposed to represent have almost no say in who they are, what they're going to do. That's how corrupted the system has become.
Yeah, I so appreciate your laying that out, Mike, and really appreciated your newsletter, all of your newsletters, but the one on the John Roberts election. And, one of the things that I know from the research I've done and what we've seen in publications is that Citizens United decision was improvidently granted in the first place. It was a 5-4 decision that Clarence Thomas sat on and cast the deciding vote, even though his wife, Jenny, had just received $500,000 from Harlan Crow, the Nazi memorabilia collecting billionaire, to fund her Liberty Central operation, which was designed to take advantage of that decision to come. And so you have this massive amount of dark money unleashed, this tsunami of cash unleashed following a decision where if Clarence Thomas had recused himself, as he should have done under federal law, it would have been a 4-4 decision upholding those FEC rules, which were just common sense rules saying that, saying that if you're going to spend money around an election about candidates, you should disclose, who's funding it. And Justice Stevens' dissent in that case, as I'm sure was really powerful. Just to paraphrase it, he basically said, when the American people look at the election process in the United States, the one thing they don't think is we need more money injected into it.
Right.
So I
Right.
just wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that, this cash. And it's not as though there wasn't influence by corporations before Citizens United, with lobbying and other PAC money where the money was disclosed. But now you have this both undisclosed and disclosed sort of spending and sources. And it's really a small number of billionaires who are having such a distorting effect.
Absolutely. And first on Citizens United decision, absolutely, Stevens saw it and called it for what it was. But as you also know, the Citizens United came before them twice. The first time when it came up, they came to the same 5-4 decision that, like, the crisis in American democracy was plutocrats didn't have a large enough voice. And that was so offensive to Souter that he wrote a completely scorching dissent that caused Roberts to hold it over till the next term after Souter had retired.
Yeah.
And in order to avoid that embarrassment, that is how premeditated and cynical they are in doing this, right? And as you say, it is completely not just corrupting in the sort of quid pro quo sense, but in the sense that they now sort of call the shots on war candidates and such. And it's especially important in this, like as we're talking about all of that, to remember that that 5 of the 6 of them on the court right now doing this, all but Roberts, were confirmed by senators who represented less than half of the US population, right? And out
Yeah.
of 116 people who have been justices, they are the only 5 of whom that's true, right? Every
Yeah.
other justice in American history confirmed to the Supreme Court had that happen with senators representing not just half the population, but until very recently, 90% of the population, right?
Can
But
I
it
just
was,
stop you there, Mike? Can I
yeah,
just stop you there just to say you are the one who has uncovered this and uncloaked this? I back to you and Alex, but I mean, you say that it's true, but in fact, you're the one who has absolutely illuminated it.
thank you. Thank you. And it's really important, right? Because it's when sort of that inflection moment when the Federalist Society had enough oomph with the Republican Party to try to get Bork on the court. And while we were able to push that back because he was transparent about his intentions, right? From that point on, as they have put these justices on who are not justices, but are legislators in robes, who are doing the business of the plutocrats that Congress would never even touch because it's so toxic, right? Can you imagine introducing a bill in Congress saying billionaires should be able to spend as much in elections as possible? Or introducing a bill in Congress saying that, Dobbs or any of these things, right? It is these plutocrats, these billionaires had an agenda that's absolutely toxic with the American public, with, guns, all of the things, right? And this is the way they circumvented democracy, right? They're not
Yeah.
doing law, they're
Yeah.
doing legislation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so interesting that the point you raise about these justices, this majority of the court that was appointed by senators representing a minority of the American population, especially in the context of our conversation about Citizens United, because it wasn't like the completely invented First Amendment holding in Citizens United came out of thin air. The case was about a challenge from these same very right-wing interests, the same funding interests that selected these judges and put them there, to a major bipartisan legislation, right? The Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act of 2002. Can you talk a little bit about those dynamics and how this sort of underscores the extent to which this is an assault on democracy, right? We had democratic progress in terms of consensus rejection of this type of spending in our elections, and it was wiped out with the stroke of 5 pens, or 1 pen, I guess, with four
Right.
four people joining it.
Yeah.
By these very interests that seek to now flood our politics with money, which I think has, as you were intimating, not just the effect of allowing Republicans whom these donors align with to win elections, but to really trap Democrats in a system of big money politics.
Absolutely. And I think what you're getting at is so important. I'm reminded of a comment that Scalia made in the Shelby case, where
And can you
you have,
remind folks what the Shelby case is quickly?
so that's where they basically began the complete gutting of the Voting Rights Act. Um, and what he said, right, because the Voting Rights Act had just been
Yep. Yep.
reauthorized again by overwhelming bipartisan majorities and had been signed by a Republican president, right? And so like the essence of what a democracy should be doing. And Scalia's argument was that bipartisanship and near unanimous reauthorization was evidence that the democratic process had failed because politicians were listening to their constituency and it was up to them to do the right thing, right? I mean, how upside down, right? But it's transparent. That is what they feel they're doing. So the same thing. Oh, of course, the members of Congress who are accountable to voters are going to try to do campaign finance reform to create confidence in the system. That's why we as justices have to make sure that we don't get swept away with, average voters who want an equal democracy, right? I mean, that's literally what's going on here.
Mm. I'll pass it off to Lisa in a second, but one other thing about the way they reached that ruling in Citizens United is they just completely wiped away extensive findings of fact by a bipartisan Congress, particularly around the corrupting influence of independent expenditures. And Congress went through a diligent process, hearings, findings that established this broadly defined and accepted and self-evident, frankly, understanding that independent expenditures in our politics could have a corrupting influence on the politicians that they were, effectively trying to support. And the court, in Justice Kennedy's opinion, said, no, that's just not right. We're going to sort of, leave our proper judicial function of deciding questions of law and reach a new factual holding here, which was the linchpin for the ultimate constitutional holding, which I think gets us back to what we're seeing in this election cycle, particularly around Elon Musk and his flood of particularly late money to support Donald Trump. It's very clear that this guy Musk and all these other billionaires have a direct interest in, and a self-financial interest in this outcome, and that it will have a corrupting influence. I think it's clear as day to anybody that's paying attention.
Absolutely. And although we're really talking about this electoral moment, I think a really not even commented part of the consequence of letting all this billionaire money in is that it has basically disabled Congress from passing anything that matters for people, because the ability of those billionaires to spend money against any member of Congress who has the temerity to try to rein them in now is a completely effective deterrent to legislating in our interest, right?
They don't even need to spend the money. They just need to be able to spend the money. They can threaten to spend the money, right?
That's why, since Citizens United, like, there has been almost no legislation passed that is for the public good, right? Because it's just frozen.
Well, I mean, there have been a couple of extraordinary moments, like with the IRA, where because of the circumstance, the crisis that we were facing in that moment, we were able to get bipartisan legislation to try to address the consequences of the pandemic, and also try to do something on climate change despite this court's intervention to try to stop us. But as you point out, Mike, it really has had this distorting effect in the arena of corruption prevention. Democrats have not been able to overcome the Republican obstruction of even having disclosure. Just the baseline of disclosure, not even stopping it, just naming the names has been blocked every single time. And so I wonder, as we close out this session, and we would so love to have you back on again and again, sure, Mike, I wonder if you can maybe give us a note in this particular one, maybe on a note of hope, that despite this being the John Roberts election, what are you hoping, or what can be hopeful? For me, it's that we have never had so much momentum for reforming this out of control court. We've never had this sort of reaction by the public, who now sees this court in many ways for what it is. But I wonder what your thoughts are.
Yeah, before I go to making, maybe letting a little bit of light into this conversation, I want to extinguish some of it. I think
okay,
that the examples you gave, which were undoubtedly beneficial in the sense of climate change and some of the infrastructure, also represent a real difference from how this would have been handled in the past because of the billionaires.
Yep.
Because instead of requiring, corporations to take steps to reduce climate change, for example, it was a bill to give them subsidies to do the right thing. Right?
Yeah.
Almost every one of the sort of positive things, and I'm not saying that's not positive, but it shows just how thoroughgoing the effect is. There's not even an attempt in the way we experienced in the rest of American history, where we pass laws to ensure that corporations do the right thing. Now we're bribing them to do the right thing. And Chevron, getting out of the way. Right.
Yeah.
But
I just want to thank you for doing that, because that is such an astute description of where we are. So I really appreciate your pushback. Yeah. Okay.
Now for the light. I think that what you were saying, Lisa, is absolutely true. I think that decades ago, James Baldwin said, not every problem can be solved, but no problem can be solved until it's faced. And I think we're finally getting to the point where enough Americans are beginning to face the calamity that has come from the success of this Federalist Society billionaire-backed project. And that will give us hope that if we can mobilize around that, we can do something about it.
Mike, it's been such an honor and a pleasure to not only have you here today, but to build this partnership with you, to work in the weeds with you day in and day out. You're such an inspiration for all of us. Our audience here, make sure to check out Mike's work. This guy is one of the most listened to voices at the kind of, among elected leaders, media folks. Mike's commentary and analysis is like no one else's. His weekend reading Substack is a can't miss. Weekly, or when you can get these out, read the pieces have become like really powerful and well put together. I mean, they always have been, but this one's a real barn burner, so don't miss it. And then I think you got one more installment coming, a politician.
There is and more to come too. So I right back at both of you, and you've been fighting this fight longer than I have, and I really am grateful for all you do, and also the way you've helped me understand all of the things that are happening.
You're the best, Mike. All right, everybody, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Legal AF will keep coming at you with court accountability, action, content, and analysis and news as it continues to break. We've got a lot coming for you.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.